just the way Lucas came in and handled just, an uncertainty. I don't know when he knew he was going to kick, but it probably wasn't much before the game.
Well, obviously we had the workout. He had a good workout. It was indoors. We're getting ready to play outside, but we had an indoor workout, and then we liked his. He had a great workout, first of all, and he's got a big leg. I've kind of been around him once before, and then as Friday creeped up, we kind of went through Friday, and then we didn't have Brandon going. So we got it to pregame, and Brandon went out there and kicked in pregame. I don't know if some of you guys saw that or not, but he actually started to hit the ball a little bit better as time went on. But just being around him now for enough time to feel like I just didn't think he was ready. And I don't really know if I think he could have played in his mind, but I think the coach pointed out we just didn't want this thing to be a long-term issue. And we felt like Lucas had a good workout, and he came back out and kicked for pregame, and obviously he played pretty well. Really a credit also to, Daniel. Daniel's been through a bunch of different kickers here. To be able to, get with him and hold it the right way and get the laces the right way and the lean, particularly in the win that we had in this past game, it was really well done by him as well. So credit to Lucas and his mindset, his mental toughness to be able to come in that situation and play well. With
Brandon, if he can't practice tomorrow, but he's ready to convey, looks good in warm-up Sunday, could you realistically still go with him if he's without having practice?
I think it'll be a collective conversation. We'll see what tomorrow brings, and again, we're leaning on Brandon to some degree. He's a long-term guy and been in the league a long time, so we'll see how he feels going into tomorrow, but it'll be a collective decision. Myself and Coach and Brian, we're going through all this together.
With a lot of positions, we have it better. I'm thinking of like a Zach Tom. You don't necessarily need to see him take practice reps to know that he'll be ready on Sunday. Is a kicker similar to that, where if he's a veteran, you don't need to see that and he's good to go, or do you need to see kicks during the week, see how they're doing?
Yeah, great question. I think when you start comparing positions like that, I just have a personal belief to some degree that in order to kick well, you have to kick. And not a lot of balls, but we kick 2 days a week going into the game. But again, we have a guy that's played a lot of football and to some degree has been through this. So I just think we'll see what tomorrow looks like. Lucas kicked yesterday, and it was the first time he encountered a practice wind, that we have out there with no stadium around it. So it was a little bit of an interesting situation for him and how the ball was leaned and how some of the wind takes the ball one way or the other. But we'll see what tomorrow brings. For Lucas will definitely kick tomorrow, and we'll see what it looks like for Brandon.
Rich, how often in your coaching career have you put your starting offensive line on a kicking protection unit like you did on Sunday? Yeah,
that's an interesting question because of all the conversations we've had. No one's ever asked about who's on field goal protection until we've gotten one blocked. And if you look back to Dallas, Zach Martin will be a Hall of Famer, Tyron Smith will be a Hall of Famer, Jason Witten will be a Hall of Famer. They were all on Field Goal Pro the whole time I was there. Witten came out to the Raiders in year, 15, 16. He was the right wing on Field Goal Pro. So part of the job of an offensive lineman is they play Field Goal Pro. Now, if there's a guy in there that has a knick-knack or somebody that we can take care of, we'll try to do that. But for the most part, those guys are the field goal protection unit. Now, fortunately, here in the past, we've had some bigger defensive linemen like Dean Lowry and TJ, and they were on field goal protection for us as well. But the number one job in the field goal protection unit is for the offensive line when they get done pass blocking.
What's the process for getting some cohesion with that field goal operation when you have such a short amount of time to do so?
Well, that became problematic. Obviously, we saw that in Cleveland. We actually, we had a whole new right side in the Cleveland game. We had lost Banks during the game, and we lost Belton in, I think, Thursday's practice or Wednesday's practice. So, it's problematic, but you have to go with what you got at the time that you have it. But I think the guys that came back to play last week did a good job, and hopefully it'll look the same going forward.
They have a pretty solid return game. What do they do so well?
Well, they got a good returner, first of all. He's fast. He's kind of a fearless guy. He wants to make a play, especially in the punt return game. They've had a couple different guys back there in kickoff return, and I think they've had two good shots out of the box as well. He's been there a long time. I think he's a good coach, does a good job. They've got a good punt protection team, and, they've gone through a little issue with their punter. They actually signed Pat last week, and so we're anticipating seeing him, punting. But they've got a good unit, and the return game's been pretty good, especially punt return-wise.
You've spoken about your optimism about Matthew Golden as a punt returner in the long run, but obviously you pulled him last week.
Wait, just be careful about, I didn't pull anybody.
Okay.
We made a switch. Not to mention that I think Matthew had 2 big explosive plays in there that, we talked about this last week. We talked about starters on special teams, and I said, sometimes you have to pay attention to how many plays they're playing on offense, how many plays they're playing on defense to what you do. So Matthew had gone through, I think, 3 or 4 consecutive plays where 2 of them were 2 explosive plays. So we just kind of made that switch, and it was in the red zone. So, and we had talked about last week, Rome playing in the red zone. I thought he made 2 really good decisions back there. He put himself in position to block and ended up being a touchback, and then he had one going forward for us out of the red zone. So Matthew Golden's still in the process of being a punt returner.
Good, thanks.
Hey, Rich, in your experience for a kicker who's trying to find his way and make it long-term in the league, what are the, like Lucas, what are the biggest challenges? What do they have to overcome to eventually find a place? I mean, Brandon was that guy for a couple of years himself a long time ago.
Yeah, we've been through this, right? After we lost Mason, and I think even if you look back at Mason, because I had Mason in the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Mason wasn't over 70% till he got into his 5th year in the league, and I think it's a credit to the Packer organization to stay committed to him and let him go through the process. And but I think the number one thing is accuracy when you get your opportunity. I think that's what we're all looking for, is can you have consistency in your accuracy when you do get your opportunity to do it. And then as time goes on, if you're really good at it, do you ever get to the point where you have such a bad experience that you end up, they move on from you, and everyone says, well, he could have used a new environment, right? We're hearing that a little bit. I think the kicker in Chicago had a pretty big kick the other night, and actually funny, I thought Monday night game, both teams had gotten a kick blocked, right? So it's become an epidemic. But I do think that it has to be consistency in the accuracy, making kicks when you do get your opportunities at those kicks.
Bill and I were talking to Brandon today, and he said that when he was trying to break in, there was one year where he said he thought only 2 teams even changed kickers, and now we're seeing it 6, 7 teams doing it during. Do you think that the overall patience has changed, or there's so many guys that can do it more effectively now that it's not as scary of a thing to make a change, or what do you think?
Yeah, again, another good question. I think one thing, personally, I think one thing is every game, it just seems like in the league, it's coming down to, you got to have a kicker that can score some points. We're playing in anywhere from a 2 to a 4-point range with all of these games. And also, there's a lot of guys that spend a lot of time in the off season with the different kicking coaches around the country. So we're getting constant videos of all these kickers that are working. So I think some organizations might feel like if the guy you have is not doing what you think he should do, they're going to have a workout. And if they find a guy that has a stronger leg or something like that, or has a great day, then maybe you put him on your practice squad, and then maybe he becomes elevated for you. I know we went through a week ago, we had the workout of a couple guys, and we had seen them before, obviously, and they came in and both of them competed well, but we picked one, and he had a good game. And, we hope if he has to go again, he plays well again. But they're still unknown, right? We haven't been around him that long. We're trying to do the best we can to get the ball the way he wants it and those things. But I think there's a lot of guys out there still working at their craft. And also the UFL has helped. It's another league where guys can go kick, and Lucas has done that, and obviously Daniel did that before we got him. So,
Rich, you said it yourself, epidemic of block kicks. I mean, is there anything that's I guess a common thread? I know you're studying our team and fixing that stuff first, but is there anything you're seeing that is the reason so many kicks across the league?
It's really a lot of things. It comes to a point sometimes the fundamental and the technique is not right. It comes to a point where you just get overpowered. by a bigger guy, or they hit you at the right time, or maybe the ball is a little bit lower, maybe they're a little bit deeper. But I think every one of them has been different. And if you look at all the teams in the league, a lot of guys do different things in the protection unit with their big guys. So it's really just never just one thing, but there's been a lot.
Does it have anything to do with the new kicking balls, in terms of the flight, the trajectory?
No, I think kicking a 67-yarder has a lot to do with the new ball, but not the flight of it coming out of the box, Good.
You think Keyshawn could have done more with his return on the missed field goal?
Yeah, I'd ask Keyshawn. I love Keyshawn. I wish he would have just taken a little bit of a left instead of taking a little bit of a right. But I didn't think we got ourselves in perfect position for that either. And those are hard to come by, when we had the chance at it. But maybe he should have just took a little bit of a left. But I'm still glad he had a chance at it.
Hey, Rich, that worked out for you guys, that you got the timeout, because he made it the first time. Just in general, it was good for you guys, but in general, like, as a special teams coach, do you think that that's okay? Like, are you in favor of being able to do that, where guys that close to the ball being snapped and calling timeout, or?
I do believe you should use your timeouts advantageous to you. I mean, that's what they're for, right? And they're kind of precious. You hang on to them for a long period of time. And, Matt and I, we've done that before here, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But I will say that wind was tricky this past weekend, especially that one end zone, where he missed the two of them. I mean, coming out of that left corner of the end zone, it was a violent wind. It was difficult to kick that way, and you saw it on the kickoffs a little bit as well. So he had a pretty good wind behind him, and just think did a great job with the timing of the timeout. When it works, it's great. And like everything else, when it doesn't, it's not so good. So.
During the game, are you guys having like constant or conversations with Lucas about how the wind works at Lambeau Field, or is it kind of more once he's out there, he's just figuring it out on the fly? Well,
no, it's really, you're going to get a pregame decision about what you want to do with the wind, and then I talk to coach about it, and then we get at halftime when they come back out and they kick again, we get a little bit of a decision, because I think we had the opportunity to kick off. They accepted the ball, right, because they deferred. And then so we decided we wanted to kick into the wind, and so we had the wind in the fourth. So it worked out for us that way. But that's kind of I don't really talk to the kicker a lot during the game. Now when we get into a situation right before the half, we're trying to make a kick, we're going to have a conversation of what hash he'd like it on, if we can get it there. And it would be the same thing if we're trying to get in position for a winning kick. What hash he would kind of like to be on going that way, if we can get it on that particular hash.